That's all right. I got new shoes. Lose name tags?
You got room for Madison. Come on. Got to drown it, but he's 7 foot tall.
Let's make sure all the mayors are here. Are there any Spanish-speaking members of the press? So on TV. Before we start, what we'll do for those of you in the media before we start, focus on the issues here with respect to the Conference of Mayors, and of course, if some of you, I know that just catching some of you outside that you may have other questions to ask of me with respect to some of the issues going on in the city today, and I'd be more than happy to answer those, but after the issues at hand here. First of all, if we can begin, are you all ready? You're rolling. First of all, I want to thank you for coming today, and I want to thank and acknowledge the mayors who have decided that it was important to come here to Los Angeles to meet together to discuss one of the most pressing issues facing our nation, our states, and our cities. And that's this issue of the deficit and the debt. Just a few moments ago, our mayors, by acclamation, unanimously, are calling on the Congress, on the White House, to not just focus on the deficit and the debt in a way that eviscerates the safety net, in a way that sets back the economy, that it's time for America to focus on jobs. You know, I said just a few weeks ago, and we all laugh, but you may have heard some of the people presenting today, you know, if legislators are elected to talk, mayors are elected to act. We actually have had, over the last 3 years, the worst recession in our collective city's history, at least since the Great Depression. Every single one of us have had to make tough decisions around cutting jobs, cutting services, trimming government, focusing on pensions and health care. We've had to balance our budget in very, very difficult times. But different than the debate that you're hearing in the Congress, we've had to do it in a way that didn't completely eviscerate our services, that made investments in people. We've been able to distinguish collectively, every single one of us all across the country, between spending and investments. We understand, as an example, that when you make investments in transportation, when you're investing in our ports, in our airports, in our electric grid, you're investing in the infrastructure that will strengthen our economy. You're putting people back to work. When we've made investments around housing in the middle of the worst mortgage meltdown, mortgage financial crisis since the Depression, that we can't completely abdicate our responsibility, even in these tough times, to put people into quality housing, to support affordable housing initiatives. And so we believe that the time is now. You know, here represented are some of the most significant cities in the country. If you haven't heard us say, and you haven't seen our Metro Economies report, just to understand who is here today, we represent about 84% of the population, 90% of the economic output of the nation, 86% of the jobs that are going to be created in the next year. As I've said to our colleagues, if you took just 3 cities, New York, LA, and Chicago, we'd be the 5th largest economy in the world, comparable to France and the economy of France. If you took the top 10, we'd be the third largest economy in the world, $5 trillion economy, 1/3 of the economic might of the United States of America, the number 3 nation in the world. And so what's represented here are the people who ultimately have the job of putting people back to work. And when you put people back to work in our cities, as our cities go, so goes the nation. So our message is clear. It's time for the Congress, it's time for the federal government to stop dithering on this issue of the deficit and the debt. It's time to put job number 1, job creation in our cities and across America. With us today is the first vice president of this organization, the very successful mayor of Philadelphia, a man who's had to make very tough choices. And we believe if we can make those tough choices, so can the United States Congress. Mayor Michael Nutter of Philadelphia.
President De Rogosa, thank you very, very much. Mayor Smith, our past presidents, and all the mayors here. Mayor De Rogosa, our great president, has laid out the case. We've been very clear, very direct, and very strong. 3 issues at hand. The debt ceiling must be raised. The deficit must be dealt with. But jobs must be a part of this discussion, actively engaged in by Washington, and whether it's the Congress and certainly the President. Those 3 essential elements are what must be taken on right now. The unemployment rate was just announced about 10 days or so ago, went up, and virtually no word was said about it in Washington, D.C. But every one of us, every day, we're asked about it, and we have to actually try to do something about it. And so what we're calling on is the negotiators, the people who are in the room, add the jobs component to this debate and to this discussion. It is critical to the future of this country. The debt ceiling has been raised so many times on so many different occasions that no one has virtually paid any attention to it until right now. It has literally been a routine piece of business. All of a sudden, still in the aftermath of the worst recession since the Great Depression, apparently leading toward the 2012 election, it is now the flashpoint that has re-educated all Americans about this issue that virtually no one was paying any attention to. Americans do know about the fact that they're unemployed. And every one of us get asked every day by our constituents, Mayor, where can I get a job? No one has ever walked up to me and said, Mayor, you've got to do something about that debt ceiling. Mayor, you've got to do something about the country's deficit. The deficit that Philadelphians talk about is the deficit of being unemployed and that they are running out of money. The ceiling that they're worried about is a ceiling over their heads. That's what we deal with every day in cities all across the United States of America. And so the only way this issue can really be dealt with is in 3 parts. Debt ceiling must be raised, deficit must be dealt with in a balanced approach. That's spending and revenues. That's how we do what we do in our budgets and jobs. Thank you.
So that it's clear to all of you in the press, this is a nonpartisan organization or a bipartisan organization. We have here mayors who are Democrat, mayors who are Republican, mayors who are independent. As you know, in the city of Los Angeles, the mayor runs in a nonpartisan election. With us is our second vice president from Mesa, Arizona, a Republican, to say a few words as well. Mayor Smith.
Thank you, Mayor Rogosa. The ceiling's over our heads. That was good. I get to follow that. Come on. As Mayor Rogosa said, this is a nonpartisan organization. But being the Republican in leadership, people always ask me, well, you know, as a Republican, how do you feel? Well, I can tell you that this is one issue that we are one. Because jobs are the most important thing in our cities. And if our cities are sick, if our cities are not performing, if our cities are not creating the jobs, then our country does not create jobs. I had an interesting question this morning about why should somebody in Nebraska care about what happens in Los Angeles? We are a consumer-driven economy. We are driven by people, businesses taking money out of their pockets, consumers taking money out of their pockets and spending it. If Los Angeles is happy, is healthy, if Philadelphia is healthy, if Mesa and Phoenix, Arizona are healthy, then Nebraska is healthy. We have to do something now to get spending going. And I'm not talking about government spending, I'm talking about our businesses. There are trillions of dollars on the sidelines in capital. There are trillions of dollars in consumer spending that is not being made, and one of the reasons is because of the uncertainty in Washington as this political debate rages on. I had a taxi cab driver make a very interesting comment to me last night. He said, as we were talking about the difficulty in earning a living, he said, the thing that bothers me is that the people in Washington, the politicians, don't seem to understand that this is about people. This seems to be more about arguments and the game rather than people. As my fellow mayors and leaders have said, this is about people. Mayors, one of the great blessings we have is that we deal very closely with people. We know when people suffer, we know when they succeed because we hear about it. And we're telling Washington, think about people, put people first, put people back to work. The other issues will take care of themselves if we'll just think about people and doing what's right and getting the job done. Thank you.
By the way, you'll have an opportunity to hear from some of our mayors, and I encourage you to interview them. And also with us today is our past president, Mayor Couts from Burnsville, Minnesota. But we wanted you to get an opportunity to hit on the point that Mayor Smith mentioned. This is about people, about putting people back to work, about what America's cities and their families are going through right now. And with us is Demetra Briscoe to share a few words on this issue of jobs and just what's going on in our cities today.
I want to thank the mayor for giving me this opportunity to speak, and also for Mr. Larry Gross, director of the Coalition for Economic Survival, and also the attorney Elena Popp and her staff who volunteer at the Coalition's tenant right clinics. I'm here to talk about how the deficits, or raising the ceiling deficit, will affect Social Security benefits. About myself, I'm originally from South Carolina. I moved to California from Atlanta in 1988. I have spent my entire career as a registered nurse. And then in 2005, I was diagnosed with a chronic illness. In 2007, I became a beneficiary of Social Security, disability, and Medicare. To have gone from having a substantial income as a registered nurse to living on Social Security disability has been a very humbling experience. Since I'm now a beneficiary of government assistance, I have concerns regarding the uncertainty of how the federal funded programs will be affected with raising the debt ceiling. I am concerned about how these will affect me. My Social Security check is my only source of income. Now the federal government is considering cuts in Social Security health care programs and increasing service costs to raise the debt ceiling. If my check is cut by even 5%, I will not be able to pay my rent. If I miss my rent payment, I would literally be on the street, including my parents who live in South Carolina. Right now, I live in a rent-controlled apartment building with 116 units. Many of my neighbors will be in the same situation as I, should their benefits be cut. Of the 116 units in this building, 60% of the tenants are on Social Security assistance. This means about 70 tenants could be on the streets for non-payment of rent if there is a decrease in their Social Security benefits. Currently, under the Los Angeles Rent Stabilization Ordinance, there are 12 legal reasons for property owners to take possession of a rental unit. The first cause for eviction is non-payment of rent. If you can't pay your rent, you get a 3-day notice to pay rent or quit. This means the landlord can take possession of your home. Right now, we need Congress to raise the debt ceiling with a deal that does not result in any cuts of Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. Any cuts will result in my inability to pay my rent. We are asking the City of Los Angeles to implement a temporary eviction freeze for tenants dependent on federal assistance to pay the rent if Congress does not meet the August 2nd deadline in raising the debt ceiling. Social Security recipients or Social Security disability recipients have not received a cost of living increase in about 4 years, and now we are facing cuts. I'm really getting anxious about what will happen to me in these difficult times. We all know what it means to fall behind in rent or even our mortgage payments. I want to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to tell my story, and I'm sure there's quite a few of you here today that can relate to my story. Most of us have friends or loved ones receiving Social Security or Social Security disability. With this, we look to our government officials to do the right thing. Thank you.
Demetra, thank you, because as I said, putting a face on this crisis is very, very important. With us as well is James Doc Bethard to tell his story.
Good afternoon, Mayor, and thank you very much for inviting me to this. My name is Dr. James Bethard. It's a PhD. So don't ask me for any medication. Welcome to esteemed guests and directed to Congress. I am here to plead for your help. I am old, sick, and broken. Working all of my life to serve and protect this country, paying my taxes and voting for the leaders that now wish to go back on the promise made to me by Congress to provide for me with a dignified status in my old age. I've been in Vietnam. I've suffered as a POW. I've been through the rehabilitation camps that they call the VAs. You now wish to cut our VA supplements. You now wish to take away what little bit of their Social Security that we have. The very, very wonderful people that have assisted me, such as ACLU, CES, the Coalition of Economic Survival, the CalLife for disabled, independent living and free. I am now about to be cast out. Honest people are enraged at the fat cat mentality, while selfless organizations have, helped me, not to mention a few, fight daily to provide me with a respect for a few of the U.S. Congress that now wishes to remove and raise that needs to raise the budget now. But remember, Americans for Americans. And what Mayor de Grossa and these bodies of gentlemen have mentioned to you today is the bottom line. We will not take no. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we're more than happy to answer any questions, and as I said, while I'll be very happy to answer any questions specifically about issues going on here in this town, and I'll do so in just a moment, I want to focus the issues on the subject of this press conference, and then you could ask those other questions afterwards. Any questions? All right, good. Do you have questions on any other issues? You don't? We covered that well, too. Thank you all very much.
What do you mean?